Hi, it's Roger Hamilton with the third video, which is all about wealth dynamics and how we can really make the most of it. In the first video, we went through just how you go about double earnings and half the stress, how you use wealth dynamics for yourself. The second one, which is all about the $1 million team, is how do you actually really build a team that can work for you. But even with these two things, when we look at the outside world and the way that we interact with the movements of the markets, with the ups and the downs, it's also still easy to get wrong. So here today, I'm going to be sharing about the 5 mistakes, the 5 biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make, which is why even with all the good things they do, there's still too much of the wrong things that show up. And we can avoid every single one of these. So let me start with the first one. I'm going to just jump straight into it. The first one, number one, is saying yes. Saying yes. You might think, well, wait a minute, aren't we meant to be saying yes to certain things? Absolutely. No question, if you're doing nothing at all, you've got to say yes to something. But the biggest problem that most of us have is we're saying yes to too many things. We're saying yes to too many of the wrong kind of customers. We're saying yes to too many ideas that we should be trying to do all at the same time instead of doing one thing well. We're saying yes to too many people who want to help out with us when a lot of them are costing us more than they're earning for us. And we say yes most of the time to too many activities that are on our to-do list, which is why we end up with so much stress and overload the more successful we become. So true success is not what you say yes to. It's what you say no to. It's knowing how to clear out the things that allow the trees and the flowers to bloom. It's how to get rid of the weeds and how to make sure that you're on focus. How do you know what's the right thing and the wrong thing to be saying yes and no to? And the answer is by knowing your path. When you follow your wealth dynamic square and you follow your profile, that's what you say yes to. And you let other people do the things that you're not so strong at. You say no to them. That's the number one thing and the biggest reason that when people start using wealth dynamics, they free up so much time because they just stop doing the things they shouldn't be doing anyway. And that leads me to the second thing. And the second thing, which might sound a little strange, number 2 is being wrong place, wrong time. Of course, we all know what we mean when we say we're at the right place, right time. It means we're lucky. You know, you get lucky when you get into the right place, right time. But to be at the wrong place, wrong time, how does that happen so often? It happens by not realizing how luck itself is created. And so I'll come back to this page in a little bit. We'll cover all 5 here. But let me just share that luck itself is made up of 4 letters. And we can look at the way that we can create our own luck on our own path, on our natural path of where we're heading, by realizing it all begins with number 1, location. And what I mean by location is think about a football player on a football pitch. You see, when you're in the stands and maybe you just got yourself a hot dog or a drink, you don't expect that you need to play the game. In fact, you don't. You can even go and get another hot dog if you want and the game's still playing. So for a lot of us, we're in our business and we're not even aware that we're on the pitch ready to play the game. We're just there organizing things, getting things set up, as opposed to realizing an opportunity might already be showing up. So location is realizing that the moment you set yourself in play, you're on the pitch. You're there to kick the ball. And the moment you show up and you say, right, I'm there to kick the ball, you got a chance of being lucky. You might just get the right ball at the right time. Because first of all, you're looking out for it. But the second thing is sometimes we're looking out for it and we're in the right place, right time, but we don't have an understanding of either which side we're on or an understanding about the fact that we're meant to kick it at a goal. We don't know what the rules of the game are. And so as a result of that, even though it's an opportunity, we don't know what to do with it when it comes our way. But if you know you're playing football, if you know that's your game, you know you're meant to kick it. If you're playing basketball, don't kick the ball. Pick it up and bounce it. It's a different set of rules based on the game you're playing. So understanding is knowing what game you're playing. And that's why most of us have challenges. We don't know what kind of game we're even playing in business until we follow our profile. And that leads then to the third thing, which is even if you have an understanding you're playing football, if you end up with no balls coming your way, it could be because there's no one on the pitch. If you haven't got your team, connections are all about the team you need to play the game. If you don't have a team that knows how to play football, then there's no matter how much you are on the pitch, being in the right location, knowing you're there to play the game, you still aren't going to get lucky. No balls are going to come your way. But you get the right connections coming, they're going to pass you the ball in the same way you'll pass them back to them. And that leads to the final one, which is knowledge, which is knowing how to play. One of my sayings, I went to Cambridge University, which is an academic institution, and one thing I noticed about the difference of an academic to an entrepreneur is an academic needs to know in order to do, whereas an entrepreneur needs to do in order to know. Knowledge here I'm talking about is a doing knowledge. It's not about reading a book about football and then thinking you can play. It's about actually playing the game. And the more that you're in the right place to play the game, which is your game, the more you have an understanding of what that game is, and the more that you have connections that also are playing that same game, the more you're going to find that your knowledge grows. Because the more you do, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more you can apply that learning. So luck. These four lead us to this second one here, which is wrong place, wrong time is one of the biggest mistakes by simply not knowing what game you're playing or knowing how to play the game. And the moment you start following your profile, whichever your profile is, you're going to find that every one of the successful wealth creators in every profile has collected the right connections, they know the game they're playing, and they stick with that game. That's the number two. Now there's a third thing, and this one I know for a lot of people will actually be a bit of a shocker. The third thing, which is one of the worst mistakes that entrepreneurs can take, is to take responsibility. Yes, I know. For many people, it's like, what? That's what I know I need to take. In fact, no one else around me is taking responsibility. Why I'm the only one that's trying to make all this work? Why can't anyone else be as responsible as I am? You know, a lot of people, when we say, how do you define responsibility? They will say, responsibility is your ability to respond. That would be the definition you take. Your ability to respond. That kind of means that if you've got anything you need to do in your business, if you've got any problem in your life, if you're going to take responsibility, that means you're going to have to respond to it. And guess what? You end up doing everything. By the way, if you're playing football and you take the ball, how could you blame anyone else for not kicking the ball to you? Because you're the one that's got it. The moment you take all the responsibility, there's no responsibility left for anybody else. So let's just redefine for a moment what we mean by take responsibility. For me, take responsibility is about responsibility being not how you take that responsibility and respond. It's about how you give it. So it's about the response you get from others. Let's imagine you go to a restaurant and there's a mother there. And the mother is saying, I'm a responsible mother. But her kids are running around everywhere and they're causing this racket. And the mum turns to the kids and goes, kids, come back, sit down. And they won't listen. What are the other diners going to be thinking? Probably like, it's not a very responsible mother. Because the kids aren't being looked after and they aren't responding to the mother. So what if responsibility is not your ability to respond? What if it's your ability to get the right response from others? And in the same way, you can say you're a responsible boss, but if your team members are not responding to you the way you want, maybe you're not so responsible after all, because they're not responding to you. Maybe it's the same with your health. Maybe your health is not responding the way you want to, or your wealth is not responding the way you want it to. It's because you haven't really taken upon yourself that that's an important responsibility for you. Doesn't mean you take it. It means you share it. So responsibility is not there to be taken. It's there to be shared. And a truly responsible leader is one who finds the people they can share responsibility with. And before you know it, you've got a whole team of people who are there now supporting you because they're the ones who feel responsible now, as opposed to you being the one who's taking it all, which means no one else is taking it around you. This, by the way, stops you from doing it all on your own, which is the kiss of death for entrepreneurs, having to try and figure it out on your own when other people already have figured out so much themselves as well. And by the way, this leads me to number fourth one. And the fourth one is something which is just as surprising as this one. Mistake number 4, trying to make money. This one is one where a lot of people would say, well, isn't that the whole point of me even running a business is to make money? And I'm not saying money's bad. I'm saying you need money, just like you need blood in your system to have health. You need money in your business to have wealth. You need to have it as the way to ensure that that business is sustainable. But this is not about how you go about making money. It's how you go about helping other people to make their money. Because you're going to find that all the most successful wealth creators in the world are spending a lot of their time helping other people make much more money and, more importantly, delivering value to the customer than they are themselves. They just happen to have a piece of all of it, which is why it shows up. Don't worry about giving up some of your pie. If you have a whole bakery, you can give away half of every pie, and you're still going to end up with more than enough to eat. So the key thing here is how do you actually create a flow and a way to know, well, how are you helping other people to make money? And this is where I'd like to share with you a diagram. And this diagram comes back down to the Wealth Dynamics Square, which is a diagram on the 8 stages of enterprise. That every enterprise, including your own, has to go through these 8 stages, just like a car goes through different gears. And you can know when it's time to move on to the next one because it already attracts the one afterwards. By the time you get to second gear, the natural thing to do is go into third gear. and onto fourth gear. But for too many of us, we're already trying to go to the wrong gear and work with the wrong people either too early or we're staying in the wrong gear for too long. Number one, very first thing, which is something which happens for those people at the dynamo or spring energy level here, is something here which is called, I might as well do it in blue as well, proven concept. And proven concept is when you are starting your business off, and just like Bill Gates, a proven concept is not about, I've got a product. Proven concept is I've got someone willing to buy something at a certain price. He had IBM who was willing to pay him for an operating system. Then he went out and found the operating system and then developed the operating system. In the same way that Carnegie, the richest man in the world, he's someone who, when he was looking to start a steel mill, didn't just say, I'll just go and build a steel mill. He didn't have the capital for that. He started by saying, I'm going to go and prove to the bankers that they should give me the money for a steel mill and for a steel factory because I've already got forward orders from the railway companies. And he sent people around America to get the railway companies to say, yes, if you do have steel that I can buy instead of iron, here's how much I'd want to buy. That's a proven concept. Someone's actually physically saying, yes, I want to buy it already. And the moment you have that, you're in business. Until then, there's no business. But if you do have that, too many people then keep on trying to go back to create more and more proven concepts when they've got something of new value now. Remember, all wealth is value times leverage, which means that every time you create new value, you have something new to leverage. And then you have something new again to value. So the first thing that happens on proven concept is you get to a point where you now have customers. You didn't have them before. And that can lead you on to the second thing. These are the people you're now looking to who can support you to grow to brand attraction. And brand attraction is now about how you are going back to the same customers to buy based on the brand of your business and the promise of the business as opposed to any one particular product. From brand attraction, you're going to find customers who are going to be buying from different types of things you're now doing, which is what they're looking for as opposed to your best idea. This allows you to then have a stream which will attract the third level here. Gear 3 is an operating team. It's what supporters, people who are very good at people, will bring with them if they came and joined you. I will always make sure that I have got a core team that's got the brand attraction before I bring the operating team on board. Why? Because otherwise, the operating team, you won't find the best people. They'll be asking for too much because they're not even sure if you're going to stay in business. But the moment you've got customers coming back again and again, people will start showing up saying, can I come and work for you and your team? These people become easy to get and even are going to be knocking on your door the moment you get to level 2. That takes you to level 3, operating team. And at this point, some people are already saying, right, that's it, I'm leaving, I'm going to go off and do other things, my team can look after things. But then you're missing the big opportunity, which is really building your business into something substantial, which is something that only happens when you get to levels 4 and 5. So at this point, operating team, who's making the money? Your team's making money. You're paying your team, or they're taking a percentage for coming on board. And so you're helping them make money, and as a result, they're pushing the business to the next level. The next level here is market connections. And market connections are the partners you now have in the market. You might want to sell your business, but if you're at operating team level, there's not that much value in your business right now, because if the team leaves, this is all over. Yes, you can go and change your products, and yes, you can go and even add new brands, and yes, people love the fact there's a team there, but the team's still the most important part at this point, until market connections. That's when the business now has actually got new connections that are really every day needing that business to continue, your business, in order for them to be in business. They might be your suppliers, they might be your marketing partners, but they're people that are earning money as a result of you earning money, and vice versa. So you're now saying, what marketing partners can I go to that I can help them make money with what I do in such a way that my business goes to this 4th gear? And when it gets to this point, you can then get to the 5th gear. This is something called tradable entity. It's when you can sell shares in your business if you want to. This is when you have an opportunity to list your business on the stock market if you want to. You certainly couldn't do it before this, because a company for the stock market needs to have the market connections. They need to have the ability to be able to get underwriters and people supporting it at that point. And then you then have the ability to now have something that wasn't even there before, which is of value, capital. By the way, this whole side down here is about something called capital. And it is part of our entire economic system that we have. Are entrepreneurs that are creating capital, which then leads to this side, which is something called security, which is about safety, which is about taking that capital and breaking it up into pieces. So you might get to this point, but I can tell you that most startup entrepreneurs they go from the first to the second one, and they keep on going back again, and they never get even to an operating team, because this is where most business failures begin, right here. But some people go, no, I'm going to allow myself to get to this, where I'm looking after the customers with more of what they want, instead of coming up with new harebrained ideas, so that an operating team feels that they're comfortable enough working with me. Then I'm going to focus on getting the market connections, so they are earning for me. Then I don't mind if the markets start earning from my business. I don't mind if I'm sharing some of this with investors and they're making money from my business, because that allows me to now have capital in my business. And Bill Gates became a billionaire not by all the software he sold, but by the number of shares he had in Microsoft, which he sold and that he's still holding on to as well. And that leads us to the next one, which is how you can now access finance, which is something called bankable asset. When you can actually get money from financiers or the bank, which is money where they don't even want your business. They'll secure against your business. Talking about security now. They'll secure against the business, saying this is an asset. So I can give you money based on that asset. And I can guarantee you, if you haven't got to this point yet in your business, they'll be looking for something else to secure against, like your house, because that's tradable. And you don't want that. You don't want to be in a situation where instead of your business problem being a business problem, you make your business problem a personal problem, where that business better succeed or you're going to lose your house. So this is about making sure that all of us can actually create capital, create the business, that can be sold on, and we can start a new business. At the bankable asset level, it leads to this next one, which is called our cash flow infrastructure. This is where the likes of John Paul Getty or Rockefeller or even Google of the world, they actually have a cash flow infrastructure where people will pay just to have part of their cash flow. This is a bit like having an apple seed turning into a little tree. The tree grows. The tree now has got its own apples. You can now take those apples off and the tree's still there. Right? It's about actually knowing that this is a natural cycle of growth that happens in anything which is of value. And then from the cash flow infrastructure, you eventually get to this thing, which is where the apple itself can be sold for the seed inside it, and they can plant the seed and have their own apple trees. That here is called licensable model, where you actually can take the whole model that created this and you can license it or franchise it. And too many people try and start from this step number one before they've even proven the model, before they've even gone through this. You'll notice that every single step here, someone else is making money. You'll notice there's a crossing point here. That in fact, our entire markets, if I was to use very fancy words, are about on this side something called capitalization, where capitalization is about starting from nothing and creating something which is now of value. And simple word here, security, securitization, is about how the securities markets, which is the whole finance markets, are able to take these things that entrepreneurs turn into capital and break it up into pieces so that they can actually share them out. Every boom and bust happens as a result of either overcapitalization, which happened, like if you remember, at the turn of the millennium with the dot-com bust, where everyone said, wow, everything's actually worth more than it really should be based on the flow. And so all the capital values dropped and there was a crash. And similarly, over-securitization, when the capital's there, but no one even knows what it's all been chopped up into, which is what happened with the collapse of the finance market in the global financial crisis of 2007, 2008. It's a very different type of crash. And this will continue to cycle as we go through, because everyone's always overshooting the mark before they come back again. Bottom line on this is that if you start understanding that there are gears, you'll know that you're already starting in a gear that's too high, where the wrong people are the ones who aren't even ready to make money on it yet. And so you can't even get people to say yes to it, to be your partner or to fund you, because you haven't even taken this first step. Start in first gear, move on to second. If you don't, just like a car, your whole plan will stall. And vice versa. If you're in one gear for too long, you'll know it because you run out of time. This is a bit like a car which is in a gear for too long. It starts whining. If you find yourself whining or people around you whining, it's because you're in the wrong gear. And it's time to gear up to the next level by actually changing who you're helping to make money at that next level as well. So this is now talking about this next step, which is number 4, trying to make money. You don't have to try to make money anymore. You have to try to make water flow. If you actually create the river, the water will flow naturally. And if you actually create those steps which allow you to go from one to the other in the natural time, then you're going to find people are happily making money. And from that, you'll be making your money as well. And that takes me to the final one, number 5. And this is probably the most important one of all. Because number 5 is as you start making it, you hold on to it. Holding on to what you've got is the 5th one. And this is critical. Because if you're in a river wanting to get into flow and you're not in flow, the only way is that you're holding on to something. So maybe you're holding onto a rock. you're holding on to your ideas, you're holding on to the business concept, the way you've got to set up, or even to the level that you're playing at. And instead, if you just let go, you'll always go into flow. So letting go is knowing that you're actually changing your paradigm from where you are to where you want to go. And when you do that, everything starts to shift. We start finding that these steps that we can take to evolve and grow where we are and where we're setting ourselves up for success, that it's already been done. The mistakes have already been made. That we don't need to hold on to anything because we think it's an original idea and we're trying to make an original mistake. It's something where there's already a pathway that's gone before us. Now, by the way, this concept here, this isn't new. If you've ever read someone called Joseph Campbell, who talks about the hero's journey, and that was the inspiration for George Lucas and Star Wars. The idea of what Carl Jung talks about, which are the archetypes, the myths of man, which allows us to be able to really let our own journey sing off the examples of others who've come before us. When we look at it that way, it's amazing how everything can shift, even on a pathway like this. And what I mean by that is that if you look at something like the hero's journey, where it's broken into 5 steps, which is about starting from the ordinary, going out to achieve the extraordinary, and then from there returning again. That if we take that concept, I can put down some words here. Some words which I'll start with another sheet here so we can see these. Words which link to those 5, where we start with something called the source. It's the biggest illusion which our egos give to ourselves, which is that we're the source of our ideas, that we're the source of our genius, that we're the ones that are making it all happen. I could tell you my idea from a new business, but then I have to kill you, because if you know that, then you're going to tell everyone and they'll all do it before me. I mean, this mindset that somehow we have something other people don't have really does mean that we miss all those opportunities out there because we're holding on to the small part when there's so many amazing things already out there that we could be part of. So when we think of ourselves being a source, we're an illusion already from us being able to really go out there and be the best that we can be. But some of us, we do that, and we try and start the journey that way. And the first thing that happens, just like when you're going out to fight the dragon, is you always have some small tests on the way. This is what Joseph Campbell talks about in The Hero's Journey, is that you have this concept of ward. Ward is to protect, to ward off the spirits, to ward off the dangers around us. And for many of us, we can't even do that because we're not strong enough. We don't have the right team. And so we just retreat back to source again. But once in a while, we can actually make that happen. We do that, and we end up getting to the top of the castle. We're up there with the maiden. We've slayed the dragon. And we get the view of what it's all about, who we are. And from this view, we turn and come back to source. This, by the way, remember, I talked about it in the first video, is actually a pyramid where there's the 5th element as well in the middle, which is where we get to keep count. It's like the score. We get to see exactly how we're doing. Are we winning? Are we not winning? It's a very two-dimensional view of life, because as long as we're looking at it this way, we're going in an eddy current. We're not really going anywhere. But to really spiral up, to go through the question why is this happening and lifting again, it's worth noting that we could actually add 2 letters to each one of these. And we suddenly realize why it is that those people who are really successful, who are in flow because they're doing it again. They're doing it for a second time, for a third time. That when you actually add the 2 letters R and E in front of this, and you have this new word that's resource, that all great entrepreneurs are resourceful. They don't start by saying, I don't have the resource. They start by saying, where can I find it? They themselves say, how can I be a resource to others? Not how do I make money, but how do I help other people make money? So when we become the resource, then suddenly we realize there's a limit to what we can get, but there's no limit to what we can give. From resource, we then realize that on this side, we have a new word, which is reward. The reward doesn't start when you get to the end. The reward starts in the journey. Even more so, reward is a very different word from this word here, which is return. You know, when they say, I got a 10% return on my money, they're talking about this side, the financial markets. They're talking about securitization. It's like I'm getting return on the asset. But you'll see an entrepreneur who'll say, I think I've got infinity return because I didn't put any money in my business and now I'm making money out of it. This first part here, which is building the business, isn't about return. It's about reward. You don't go define an employee and bring them in on the basis that you're going to give them a return. You do it on the basis you're going to give them a reward. And it's the same for the people that you end up with as your partners. So this word reward is, what is your reward for actually being on this journey? How are you rewarding others for being on the journey? The motivation they're going to get to work with you is going to come from the rewards that you provide and that you share with each other. And then the returns will be coming as a result of doing a good job on this part. Obviously, this one here, review, is about the rhythm that you create within your business. And for those of you who choose to go deeper and actually have taken your Wealth Dynamics profile or are about to take your Wealth Dynamics profile, you're going to find that there's much more information in detail about what the steps are to really start building a high-performing team that can use all these tools in a way that really brings out the best in them. And of course, that brings us to the middle, which is to recount. And to recount is not about counting anymore. It's not about numbers. It's now about words. It's about the idea that we ourselves have got within ourselves that ability to tell a story. That if you're not on a story worth watching and worth telling, then already you're probably doing the wrong thing. But if you're doing something that already is heroic in itself. You know, by the way, there's a word for something which is a promise, something which is a commitment where it turns into a journey. And it's a word called quest. A quest is to go on a journey of promise. It's to go on something which is posed as an answer to a grand question. In fact, the word question has quest within it. It's the quest that I am on. And the size of your quest is determined by the size of your question. So if your question this morning was, what am I going to have for breakfast? That's about as big as your quest is going to be. But if your question is, how am I going to transform this market, or how am I going to make an impact on this part of the world? That's a bigger question. And it means that your quest is going to be bigger too. There's another word for quest, and it's a word called an undertaking. And an undertaking, in order to go on one, means you need to undertake. To undertake is a word called entreprendre in French. Entreprendre is to undertake. If you think about entreprendre as a word, that's the root of entrepreneur. In fact, entreprendre as a tense of the verb entrepris is where we get the word enterprise. So an entrepreneur, by its definition, is someone who is on an undertaking, someone who's on a grand quest, someone who is on a pathway to create a structure, an enterprise that has an ability to build capital and has an ability for you then to provide returns to others as well as rewards for those within it. And if we start just using this process of being able to grow, it's amazing the difference it can make within our lives. I still remember my very first business, and this is the story I'm going to end with here. I remember my first business ever. I was like 20, 21 years old. I was so stressed because I was trying to build it. I still thought in those days that businesses are things meant to be built as opposed to grown. And I still remember that I was there like, I've got to build this thing, I've got to build this thing. And everything I added, I had to then think of 10 things and 20 things and everything everywhere. All the systems and structures were more and more and more things. And I just couldn't keep track of all of it. And it was stressing me out. But then what happened was, lo and behold, my wife gets pregnant. And luckily, it was by me. And so now we're going to have a baby. And I remember all the way up to the birth, I was just so preoccupied with my business. And then suddenly, she's in labor, and we're going to the hospital. And we get to the hospital, and here I am now in the hospital, and in the midst of all of this stress that I was feeling, out pops a beautiful young baby daughter. That was Kathleen, our first daughter. I still remember when I actually just held this little baby in my hands, and my immediate first thought when I was looking at this little baby, which was, everything works. It's like here I am trying to run this business where everything's so complicated, and there's this amazing, magical piece of life where everything works. And then I added, and I think it was allowed, I added, and I hardly had to do anything. And I think it was allowed because I remember Renata saying, yeah, tell me about it. It's like, here we have this idea that life itself shows up with flow. That the moment you let flow work, nature does its magic. And your business is no different. Your business is a living thing. You know, your life is a living thing. And the more that we actually start using these principles to allow natural flow to grow and for us to do the right thing, the right time, that is everything. And it happens when we actually let go. So the final thing that I want to say to you is that if these videos have resonated with you, this idea that you have a natural path, you have a natural way to move forward, and that it's when you say no to the rest of it that you actually are able to then really get yourself on path. That from these mistakes, these 5 mistakes, which tend to come from the illusion that we're the ones that are making it all happen, as opposed to actually being the gardener that knows that nature is going to take care of the garden if we can just be there to nurture it. Saying yes is the wrong thing to do. Saying no to the right things is the right thing to do. And in the wrong place, wrong time, create that luck. Create that luck which allows you to move in the right direction. Instead of taking responsibility, share responsibility. Allow others to be part of it so that they're the ones that have their candles lit on what they're strongest at, and surround yourself with great people that way. And trying to make money is not about you making money. It's about how do you help other people make money and then naturally it will show up for yourself as well. You do those 4 things, it all comes from the 5th one, which is instead of holding on, let go. Find out your profile, then follow it and get the right team around you. So that's where I now come in with my invitation to you. If you have done your profile already, go back and read through the reports. You know there's a lot of detail and information in there that will help you. If you have not done your profile yet, this is the time to do it. Make sure that you follow the links which are on this video or off the side of this video. Make sure that you click through. You take the test, which does not take long at all to take, but when you take it, you'll be amazed at the results. Read through the reports, and then we'll give you a whole group of different resources and a whole list of different places you can go to really get more in touch with not just what your profile is, but more importantly, who you are. Enjoy the journey. Remember, it's a journey of promise. And at the end of it, there's that reward for you, which is to be who you were meant to be. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in other videos and through this journey together.